Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today. We have some important items to go over, and after our brief remarks, we'll try to take a few questions. First, I want to introduce the three people who have joined me today for this announcement. Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Civil Rights Division, Special Agent in Charge Doug DePodesta of the Memphis FBI Field Office, and First Assistant United States Attorney Reagan Fondren. Almost 8 months ago, I stood at this podium to announce that our office, together with the Civil Rights Division, had opened a criminal civil rights investigation into the circumstances leading to the tragic death of Tyre Nichols. I said that the investigation would be thorough and methodical, and that, as with any other investigation, we would go where the facts led us. That day, I also made a point to say that we care deeply about potential violations of constitutional rights here in my hometown. And I told the citizens of Memphis that I want this city to be a place where justice is done. To do justice, we must ensure that everyone's civil rights are protected. Earlier this afternoon, a federal grand jury returned an indictment charging 5 former Memphis police officers with violating Tyre Nichols' civil rights, resulting in Mr. Nichols' death. The indictment also charges those same 5 defendants with obstruction of justice. The 5 defendants are Emmett Martin III, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Desmond Mills Jr., and Justin Smith. In a moment, I will discuss the specific charges against the defendants, but first, I would like to invite Assistant Attorney General Clark to the podium.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Ritz, and good afternoon. I'm Kristen Clark, and I lead the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. The Justice Department has brought federal civil rights criminal charges against 5 former Memphis Police Department detectives involved in the tragic death of Tyre Nichols. The charges allege that 5 former Scorpion team detectives used excessive force, resulting in the death of Mr. Nichols, that they aided and abetted each other in using that excessive force, and that they failed to intervene to stop that excessive force. We also allege that after they used excessive force on Mr. Nichols, the detectives failed to render medical aid or to advise the dispatcher and emergency medical personnel of Mr. Nichols' serious medical needs, even as his condition deteriorated and as he became unresponsive. As time passed at the arrest scene, the defendants discussed striking Mr. Nichols, hitting him with straight haymakers, and taking turns hitting him, information that they failed to tell EMTs and paramedics. We also charge all 5 detectives with conspiring to and taking overt action to cover up their misconduct. As Americans, our Constitution gives us certain basic rights when we interact with law enforcement officers. We have a right to be free from unreasonable force, a right to have other officers intervene to stop the unlawful assault, and a right, when in police custody, to have urgent medical needs appropriately addressed and not met with deliberate indifference. These rights define a standard of conduct that police officers must meet, a standard that we enforce across the country at the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. Enforcing that standard is one of our highest priorities for 2 reasons. First, our obligation to protect people's constitutional rights, and second, our mission to ensure effective policing in our communities. Effective policing requires public trust. We all know that police officers have challenging jobs and that most officers carry out their jobs with honesty, dedication, and integrity. But when some officers violate the Constitution, when they use excessive force, When they ignore serious injuries inflicted on people they arrest, their actions erode the public's trust. At the Civil Rights Division, one of our highest priorities is to ensure law enforcement accountability and to preserve and restore the public's faith in law enforcement. The statistics speak for themselves. Since January of 2021, the Justice Department has brought more than 100 prosecutions involving violations of constitutional and legal rights by law enforcement officials. And in that same period, we obtained more than 86 convictions. We will never stop working to fulfill our duty to protect Americans from unlawful acts of police violence. We will work to hold offenders accountable because in our country, no one is above the law. I pledge to you, as Attorney General Garland often says, that we will follow the facts and the law, and we will seek to ensure that our system of justice lives up to its name. Note that the charges announced today are separate from the Justice Department's civil pattern or practice investigation into the Memphis Police Department opened this past July. The charges announced today are criminal, while the pattern or practice investigation is a civil matter that will be conducted separately and independently from the criminal case. Earlier today, I sat down with Tyre Nichols' mother and father to convey my sympathy for their loss. I extend my deepest condolences to Tyre's family and to all of those who knew him and loved him. It is tragic to see a life cut short at 29 with so many milestones unmet, so many words unsaid, and so much potential unfulfilled. Tyre Nichols should be alive today. No one in this country should have to bury a loved one because of police violence. The Justice Department will never stop working to fulfill our duty to protect the American people from excessive and unlawful use of force by officials acting under color of law. Since this tragic incident occurred, the Civil Rights Division has been working alongside prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office as well as FBI agents here in Memphis, and I want to thank this team for working so hard in investigating this case and guiding it through our system of justice. I'll note that the defendants are presumed innocent under our law, and now the federal criminal process will take its course. I now turn the podium back over to U.S. Attorney Ritz, who will describe the indictment in further detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Clark. I want to go through the specifics of the charges. The indictment charges all 5 defendants in 4 counts. First, the indictment alleges that the defendants unlawfully assaulted Mr. Nichols and failed to intervene in the unlawful assault. By doing so, they deprived Mr. Nichols of the right to be free from unreasonable force. Second, the indictment alleges that the defendants knew that Mr. Nichols, who was an arrestee in police custody, had a serious medical need, and that they disregarded that medical need by failing to render medical aid and by failing to advise the police dispatcher and emergency medical personnel of the circumstances. By doing so, the defendants deprived Mr. Nichols of the right to be free from a police officer's deliberate indifference to an arrestee's serious medical needs. Third, the indictment alleges that the defendants intentionally conspired to withhold and omit material information and to make false and misleading statements in an effort to cover up the use of unreasonable force on Mr. Nichols. The indictment lists several overt acts in furtherance of this conspiracy, including that the defendants did not tell the MPD dispatcher, an MPD supervisor, Memphis Fire Department EMTs, or Memphis Fire Department paramedics that they knew Mr. Nichols had been struck repeatedly, that the defendants used their body-worn cameras in such a way as to limit the capture of evidence at the arrest scene, and that the defendants provided false and misleading information about the arrest scene for the official incident report. Finally, the indictment alleges that the defendants obstructed justice by providing false and misleading information and withholding material information in their communications with a police supervisor and a police detective, both of whom were tasked with writing reports on the arrest of Tyre Nichols. As the Assistant Attorney General said, these charges, of course, as with any criminal case, the indictment contains allegations only, and defendants are presumed innocent until proven guilty. I want to say that the first two counts, alleging civil rights violations resulting in death, carry a sentence of up to life in prison, and the other two counts, the obstruction of justice counts, carry a potential prison sentence of up to 20 years in prison. I also want to say thank you to the dedicated team of prosecutors and law enforcement agents who are working on this case. This case is being handled by my office's newly formed National Security and Civil Rights Unit, working hand in hand with the Civil Rights Division. I'm proud of our team and proud of their commitment to protecting the civil rights of all Americans. Now we are able to take just a few questions.
Do you anticipate further charges?
At this time, we would not comment on the existence or status of any criminal investigation. We are here to announce that the 5 defendants that we've charged today have been charged in this indictment.
Freya Jones, News Channel 3. Can you explain the weight that these charges have over the current criminal charges here in Shelby County and how this could impact the ongoing legal proceedings here?
Yes, these cases would be handled on separate tracks. It's 2 different systems. So the state charges would be handled in state court, federal charges here in federal court. And the state court and the state system over there would set the trial date and things like that. Over here in the federal system, the same thing would happen, and we're not going to make any predictions today about how that timeline might emerge.
So we're seeing that the DOJ is already conducting these interviews with people in the Memphis community about their experience with Scorpion Unit and MPD. Did that contribute to these charges at all, or is that separate, like the pattern of practice?
The Justice Department is actively conducting community meetings and gathering information in the course of carrying out its civil pattern or practice investigation into the Memphis Police Department. We look forward to continuing to hear from the community as that investigation takes its course, but we will underscore that that is a separate investigation from the criminal charges that we're announcing today.
Final question.
Do you expect a hearing tomorrow or very soon?
Mr. Saines, I believe in the federal case, we expect that the defendants would be making their initial appearance in the coming days. Thank you all for being here.